Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor and pleasure to welcome you all today to this important conference on positive nutrition as prevention of NCDs, focusing on traditional diets and the Mediterranean model, held under the patronage of the Italian Embassy in the UAE. The promotion of healthy lifestyles plays a critical role in reversing the rising burden of non-communicable diseases that are currently the leading cause of death globally and that are heavily impacting the region of the GCC and the UAE, as you are all aware. Several studies have linked the Mediterranean diet to a lower prevalence of incidence of a number of chronic conditions due to several factors, as the mix of balanced food intake, lifestyle, and social interactions. The Mediterranean diet was recognized as a nutrition reference model by the World Health Organization in 1994, and it was classified by UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity in 2010. Our panelists today are very esteemed experts in the field of health and nutrition, and they will provide more insights on the subject. But first, I would like to ask you please to join me in welcoming His Excellency, Mr. Liborio Stellino, the Italian ambassador to the United Arab Emirates, who will deliver a welcome speech, and his speech will be followed by the speech of His Excellency, Mr. Patricio Fondi, the ambassador of the European Union to the UAE, as well as the intervention of Dr. Latifa Rashid, head of the Nutrition Department at the Ministry of Health of the UAE. I thank you for your attention, and Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, authorities. It's a pleasure to see many distinguished representatives from government authorities, dear colleagues, dear Patrizio. I'm very happy that you are here. This is not only an Italian point of view, I think it's a European point of view. Dear Raffaele, dear colleague, Ambassador De Luzio, representative from Federalimentari, Gianpaolo, our great Trade Commissioner, Valentina Setta, Consul General. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a great pleasure for me to be here because when we decided with Raffaele, Valentina, and Gianpaolo to host an event about nutrition, we debated whether it was better to organize on the margin of Gulf food or on the margin of Arab health. But we didn't have doubt, because nutrition is the best prevention for health. And as Madame Rola Arad said before, nowadays our societies suffer of a widespread, dangerous diffusion of diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, and we believe in Italy that the best therapy is the education to good food, to healthy food, and to the promotion of healthy lifestyles. Now, when I present to this distinguished audience the correlation, the link between Italy and food, probably your first reaction is the memory of the magnificent fettuccine that you ate in Piazza Navona under the Roman sun, or a gorgeous risotto on the Lake of Como. But this is only part of the whole truth. The real truth is that Italy, and this is statistically proved, ranks still today among the healthiest countries in the world. And I believe that with Japan, every year we fight for the first position as the country with the longest life expectancy. And this is why not only our food is delicious, but because the roots of the success of Italian food is the attachment to the top natural ingredients, top quality natural ingredients, to the utmost importance that our farmers, our producers, our manufacturers give to the sustainability of the food processing, to the traceability from the soil to your dish of a food product. And this creates the basis for the education to healthy nutrition and the promotion of a healthy lifestyles. As Madame Arab said before, it is not by chance that in 2013 UNESCO recognized Mediterranean diet among the intangible mankind heritage. So we stick to this principle, and we believe that, of course, to fight the disease and the risks that our society run, it's a complex issue, and the correct information about nutrition and the correct adoption of a healthy lifestyle is part of a multi-factor strategy and policy. But what I can say, and in this case, I'm not talking only as the ambassador of Italy to the UAE, but I am behind me the whole Italian parliament, the whole Italian government, is that it is misleading to base the perspective of a better growth of our population just adopting trade shortcuts. So what it worries us in this moment is this debate concerning this traffic light labeling that is in discussion in the GCC countries and has been adopted in other countries. Why? Because, of course, you can give this information. For us, the transparent information to consumers is a must, but it's not correct, it's misleading to convince, to orient the consumers that the risk factors depend only on the nutrients level of sugar or fat, etc. Because the paradox will be that in this classification, this weird classification with the traffic light, red, orange, and green, according to the level of nutrients, calories, etc., we will have the paradox to have the Coca-Cola Zero with a nice green traffic light and the olive oil with the red. I think that the world societies will grow healthier and better with this kind of classification. So in a very frank and friendly way, I'm sure that during the panel that gathered fantastic experts on the issues, everybody will be enlightened about the best way to respect our population and the best way to adopt a correct nutrition information. So I want to thank again Federalimentari, the Trade Commission, and all the local authorities that give us support to present our initiatives. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, dear Liborio, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for inviting me to this important panel on body nutrition. In spite of the fact that the EU has a limited competence on this issue because it belongs to member states, I'm very happy to be with you today and to go over the EU general approach on the issue, which is very important to all of us. Let me start saying that it is widely known that in order to achieve overall health and well-being, one needs to consume a healthy diet, perform regular physical activity, and I underline, perform regular physical activity, and maintain a healthy body weight. Unhealthy diets and physical inactivity may lead to a huge health and budgetary burden. Making small changes to eating habits and taking up regular physical activity can make a big difference on one's health and decreases the risk of diseases. All this means that individual ingredients or nutrients should not be considered the culprits for increased risk of non-communicable diseases, but rather the whole lifestyle, including the reduction or lack of movement, is most responsible for one's state of health. What the EU does in the field of positive nutrition. The EU, and specifically the EU Commission, is working on several elements. First of all, it encourages partnerships involving groups working in the field of nutrition and physical activity, the private sector, governments, and the World Health Organization. Secondly, it calls on the food industry, civil society, and the media for widespread efforts to improve responsible marketing and labeling and promote physical activity. Thirdly, it strengthens monitoring and reporting in collaboration with the WHO to initiatives like the, the Nutrition Policy Database. In this regard, let me also remind some specific initiatives by the EU. The first one is the EU Platform for Action on Diet, Physical Activity and Health, which gathers key stakeholders from civil society for the promotion of healthy diets and physical activity. Secondly, the high-level group on nutrition and physical activity, which ensures coordination of action between governments of the EU countries. Third, the Global Burden of Disease, or GBD. This is a critical resource for informed policy making, which published a study in 2017 estimating that more than 950,000 deaths are attributable to dietary risks due to unhealthy diets in the EU alone. As an example, the following risk actors were identified: diet low in whole grains, diet low in fruits, diet high in sodium, diet low in seafood, diet low in vegetables, diet high in sugar-sweetened beverages, diet low in calcium, diet high in trans fatty acids, and diets high in red meat, just to name some. Fourthly, I would like to remind the general EU framework for national initiatives on selected nutrients, which serves as a tool to support and reinforce national policies and guide voluntary actions. As far as the EU member state side is concerned, I would like to mention the several monitoring initiatives already underway in many EU member states, in addition to collaborative efforts among them. In this regard, I would like to mention in particular the Joint Action on Nutrition and Physical Activity, JAMPA, is one of such efforts and aims to provide guidance and some degree of harmonization to the sharing and promotion of the best practices between the countries in the European Union. Monitoring science activities will also be complemented by additional consideration, such as analysis of packaging trends in relation to portion size choices, and assessment of potential impacts on nutrient intakes, overall diet quality and health, using modeling and other approaches. In conclusion, with proper information, encouragement and support, people can control many of the factors that influence their health and learn to take a greater personal responsibility for their own well-being. I am confident that by working together, we can tackle the problem. We must continue to be relentless in promoting healthy lifestyle behaviors across the population. Once again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. I look forward to listening to what our prestigious panelists will say. Thank you for your attention.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. Excellence, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor and a pleasure to take a part in this event. NCDs are a big challenge for us in UAE, and the Ministry of Health has been active to addressing this burden. We strongly believe that a health promotion, disease prevention can instrument lowering risk factor for UAE national. Today, conference serve as opportunity, change and expert knowledge, as well as highlight important effect and the small life change on over health. We have recently finalized our national action plans, and also we established a task force for national action plans. Also we finalized our national health survey, and at the end we welcome in this initiative, and I'm happy to have a collaborative and constructive approach to NCD. And thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, and Dr. Rashid for your interesting interventions. I would like now to welcome our four panelists. So we will start by order with Dr. Daniele Del Rio, who is the head of the School of Advanced Studies on Food and Nutrition at the University of Parma, Italy. He also acts as a scientific director of the Head for Nutrition Education Innovation Program at the Global Center for Nutrition and Health in Cambridge, UK. The intervention of Dr. Del Rio will be followed by the one of Dr. El-Madani, who is a consultant in clinical nutrition and vice president of the Saudi Society for Food and Nutrition. The presentation will be followed by the one of Mr. Douglas Grandel, who is an acclaimed business journalist. He is the author of several books like The Sugar Lie or No More Food Restrictions. In his publications, Mr. Grandel deals with controversial issues, the question of controlling public opinion, and the limits of state regulations. Last but not least, we will have the presentation of Dr. Luca Piretta, who is a physician, specialist in gastroenterology and digestive endoscopy, and a specialist in human nutrition science at the Department of Clinical Sciences at Campus Biomedico, University of Rome. Dr. Dagir,
time here. Thank you all for the invitation. I'm actually really honored to be here, and I'll try to convince you it's an easy task actually about the quality and the benefits of the Mediterranean diet and how and what we should do to try to apply it in the best of the way. First of all, I'm going to introduce you one indicator that is very useful to understand the impact of our behavior on the quality of our life. This is very used in epidemiology, and it's called DALI. It means disability adjusted life years. It indicates the years that we live in good health. Losing years of good health means a negative impact on the quality of our lives. So if you, and I'm going to say something bad here, if you die before the average age for your population, or if you get sick at the end of your life, it means that you're losing high quality years, and this is negative, of course, for both yourself, your family, but also it impacts the economy of the state you live in. So this is a very nice indicator, and it's interesting to see the millions of quality years that globally are lost because of non-communicable diseases. Not just that, but the three factors that describe the loss of DALIs are environmental, behavioral, and metabolic. We're interested in the behavioral ones, so the one that we can impact with our choices, okay? If you zoom into the behavioral, one of the most important factors is diet, the choices you make with your diet. And if you check the list of on the right, your right actually, you see that the factors in the dietary risks linked to the loss of DALIs are low fruit, low vegetables, low legumes, low nuts and seeds, too much red meat, high processed meat, low fiber, low calcium, low polyunsaturated fatty acids, high trans fat. So these factors describe a lot the loss of this quality years of your life. And I also zoomed in into your country, so the United Arab Emirates, and it's pretty much the same. Of course, we're talking about less years because the population is lower than globally, but it's pretty much the same. So the point is, how can we counteract this? And it looks like the Mediterranean diet might actually be the best countermeasure to avoid the loss of this quality, high quality years of life. Because if you read the definition, it's characterized by high intake of olive oil, fruit, vegetables, cereals, whole meal, moderate intake of fish and poultry, low intake of dairy products, red meat, processed meats. So it's actually very good in comparison to the graphics I showed you before. It looks like this is the best choice. So I guess you know the Mediterranean diet as a concept. It's always represented like with a pyramid that says that, as mentioned before by His Excellencies, an active life, physical activity, and a proactive social life, this is needed to stay within the Mediterranean lifestyle. And then on the base of the pyramids, you see foods and things you actually have to consume on a daily basis. And then going up to the top, the frequency of consumption needs to be reduced. So the good things are at the base of the pyramids. You see whole meal cereals, fruits, vegetables, and olive oil there. Everybody knows this, but the point is that it works. It's demonstrated. As mentioned before, it's the most studied dietary approach in the world, and this is one of the title of one of the most recent publications demonstrating its activity, its benefits, and it's on the New England Journal of Medicine, one of the most relevant journals in medicine today. And it's about the PREDIMED study, the biggest study on the Mediterranean diet ever done. If you check, without going into technicalities, the population that were under actually the Mediterranean diet approach with olive oil or with nuts in particular, incurred into less cardiovascular events or deaths during the duration of the study. So we're talking about hard endpoints, not risk events, cardiovascular events. So it works. It works also because if we put together all the results from the literature, not only the PREDIMED study, but also the others, you see that in a way that epidemiologists use to express results, the Mediterranean diet is protective. So it's actually very wise to follow its advice. The point is that I do live in the Mediterranean basin, so it's easy for me. But what about people living outside the Mediterranean basin? Is this unachievable for them? Well, the answer is no. You can export the concept of the Mediterranean diet everywhere. For example, in the UK, I've been staying there for a while during the last years, and I can tell you also based on this recent publication that applying the concept of the Mediterranean diet in a place where, believe me, the Mediterranean food is nowhere to be found, it's actually pretty good. It works very well, it reduces the risk, and it also impacts, with some rough calculation, the cost of the health system. So it works even outside the Mediterranean basin. Another example is the Latin American pyramid, which resembles it's an adaptation of the Mediterranean diet pyramid, and it works pretty much the same. And actually, also here, we have results from colleagues in South America, many countries in South America, that say that it works. So if you check, the point is that the Mediterranean basin, from a latitude viewpoint, is reproducible even elsewhere in the world, like again in California or some areas in South America like Chile and even Argentina and South Africa, Australia. Now here, maybe we're a little out of the Mediterranean area, or at least the latitude equivalent of, but we need to remember that most of the food that we consume in the Mediterranean basin and that is part of the Mediterranean diet did not actually originate in the area, and it was imported there by migration and discovery. So it's actually easy to reproduce it. And I found this on the web and in a scientific publication that is reported down there, and I found it very interesting. This is an adaptation of the pyramid from Middle East countries. And if you check the items inside, it's actually very, very similar as a concept to the Mediterranean pyramid. So really it's easy to apply this and adapt it. So this is the word I would like to use in this case, adapting the Mediterranean dietary approach. It's been done in many different places. Again, they've been trying in the UK, they've been trying in the north of Italy, and in the south of Germany, in Austria and Switzerland, so an alpine area that is not really Mediterranean, and they're doing it with local products, which is another important thing, and it's succeeding. They have been doing it with the northern diets. They're, you know, the Nordic diet is the other one very studied and very working, but it's some sort of Mediterranean twist that really makes it work. So again, adaptation is the word. And if you check your traditional dishes in the vast areas of the Middle East, you can see that there is something very similar to what we. I'm not saying that you're actually using the Mediterranean diet. I'm just saying that the two types of approaches are actually very similar. So keeping your traditional dishes alive is one of the tricks that you might use to stay within a Mediterranean-like approach. So what about individual nutrients? I'm really happy that this has been mentioned before. I'm not going to get into details of like traffic jams or stuff like that, but in particular, I'm going to make a couple of examples of how going into details of the diet, like individual nutrients or individual foods, doesn't really work in the context of health. So nutrients, many publications, and I'm not going to go again into technicalities, many publications in recent years have tried to substitute proteins for carbohydrates or lipids for carbs, trying to understand what is the best nutrients where you need to get your energy from. And someone is saying that, well, carbs are actually not really good. And then there's another publication a year after that that says that, look, carbohydrates are actually good until a certain level, but definitely they need to overcome proteins and lipids. And then there are other publications saying that even the type of lipids you've heard before, trans fats or high saturated fat or polyunsaturated fat, different types of lipids are different in the effect on health. Very true. But if you focus on the individual nutrients, you will never get a consensus. And this is absolutely true. It's very difficult to get rid of all the other variables. This is the point. Another case is individual foods. How can you describe health linking it to individual foods? I'm going to make you a clear example here. Cereals for breakfast, Italian products on the market, on the shelves in Italy. Both have the same nutrition claims, rich in fiber. So it's both for breakfast, cereals, and rich in fiber. But then when you get into the nutrition label, you're going to see that it's very different. The percentage of sugar is different, the percentage of lipid, the type of lipid is different. So we're talking about an individual product used in the same occasion and with the same nutrition claims, but very different. So how can we rely on individual foods when we describe health? Another example is functional foods. Big trend today. Everybody wants to eat functional foods. Everybody wants to get a health claim on their products. EFSA is actually basically saying no to many applications in this context. EFSA is the Food Safety Authority in Europe. And I agree, because functional foods, individual foods with specific functions, they don't really make sense in the context of a whole equilibrated and balanced diet. One case is the glycemic index. Glycemic index is the way we rank foods in the, let's say, effect they have on postprandial glycemia. You eat something and your the glucose in your blood goes up. One single food low in glycemic index doesn't really make any difference. But a diet that contains a lot of low glycemic index foods is actually healthy and preventive. Once again, it's the diet and its variety that pumps in and that really makes the difference. Okay, we need to keep this in clear mind. So my message, my final message before the practical example is, I don't believe in superfoods or in bad foods. I do believe in healthy diet. Okay, and this is something that all nutritionists should really go, talk about all over the world. One final example about the negative foods is a study carried out in the UK some couple of years ago, actually no, this year, January this year, last year, we're already in 2019, and it's an intervention study. In the UK, some of the foods that are considered unhealthy are actually marketed as unhealthy, and they cannot be advertised in defined time during the day, because they should not be seen by children, the advertisement. So they actually fed these foods to a population of adults in this case, and they realized that consuming these individual foods in the context of a balanced diet didn't make any difference on general health. So even negative foods are really not making a difference if taken individually. So what are the strategies we need to implement to, I'm checking the time, we need to implement to succeed? Well, I have listed 3 points. The first point is research. And I'm actually really happy that the ambassador of the EU mentioned the investment of Europe. I have to say that my research team is actually well funded by the EU in the context of research on nutrition, and that the EU is investing a lot even in research in this field, so thank you. I'm not going to get into details, but in my team we're working on a class of molecules that is contained in many of the foods linked to the Mediterranean diet, namely polyphenols, which are a minor phytochemical components, non-nutrients, that apparently they work in prevention. So I'm not going to get there, because you're going to hear about research from my colleagues in following presentations, but believe me, we need to be sure about how the mechanisms are, what the mechanisms are, how the Mediterranean diet works, how can we reshape it, improve it to make it even more preventative and beneficial. So I'm going to pass quickly towards the second point, that is the one I care about more, and it's education and public engagement. We need to educate, even starting from children, about the quality of the diet and the complete diet approach, and the Mediterranean diet in particular. We're doing it in Parma in a very defined way. We have, in a project of education for children, all the children of the primary schools in Parma and the province, talking about 7,500 children, they receive specific teaching lessons, actually in a game way, involving tools that we've developed for the purpose of educating them on healthy nutrition and the Mediterranean diet. To make you a couple of examples, the project is called Maestri del Gusto, that means teachers, taste teachers, or master of taste, because we always add the concept of taste to the exercise and the examples we make. So a couple of things: giant digestive systems to make them understand where the food goes when you eat it. Examples of how you need to guess what you're eating by just smelling it, which is, it teaches actually children to try different tastes, even if they smell not pleasantly. Pyramid that is multiple, so not just the Mediterranean pyramid, but also the physical activity pyramid, the sustainability pyramid, and the hygiene pyramids, all in one single shape. And it's actually working pretty well, and I'm really happy about the feedback we get from children and from their parents. Another nice game we do is a balance, where we actually put physical activity boxes that weighs more based on how much energy you consume, and foods that actually weighs more based on the calories, and they learn how to balance their diet based on energy intake. We also
risk for the abnormal heart rhythm. And this slide shows that decrease the synthesis of very low density lipoprotein, which is the precursor for the bad cholesterol, which is called low density lipoprotein. And the worst kind of fatty acid is called trans fatty acid. And actually, the main sources for the trans fatty acid is coming from the hydrogenation of the oil. It changes from being as a liquid to semi-solid. So in this case, part of the cis, which is a normal double bond, naturally occurring, will change to be trans fatty acid. And this kind of fatty acid considered the worst kind of fatty acid, because it's decrease the good cholesterol and increase the bad cholesterol. When we talk about Mediterranean diet, actually it has 3 factors. Number 1, the Mediterranean diet composed of olive oil, vegetable, fruit, and also bean and legume. And the second one, it's the moderation amount of intake of dairy product and also of the fish. While we change, we try to take as low as we can from meat. And this one shows like nutritional icon to translate the recommended daily allowance of milligram and gram into food dietary guideline. In this case, we can use it at home or in the restaurant or in the grocery store to determine the amount. Actually, the component of the fat which is available in the Mediterranean diet, it can be coming from polyunsaturated fatty acid, which is considered a healthy kind of fat, and this one coming from fish, and also coming from some kind of plant, and also contain high concentration of monounsaturated fatty acid, and we can find this one in the olive oil and all in the nut itself. And finally, we found a lot of omega-3 fatty acid, which are available from olives and olive oil and fish. And this slide shows the possible advantage of the Mediterranean diet, which more convincing or already proved or evidence-based is decrease the triglyceride, decrease the bad cholesterol, which is called low-density lipoprotein, and also decrease the blood pressure. In the meantime, increase the good cholesterol, which is called high-density lipoprotein. Also decrease the myocardial infarction and also heart attack and ischemic heart problem. This kind of fruit, intake of high amount of fruit and vegetable have proven to be also, I'm talking now about DASH diet. DASH diet actually composed of fruit, vegetable, grain, also much of the protein coming from plant sources such as legume, and this diet is high in potassium, calcium, and magnesium, and also this diet very low in any kind of fat or derivative of fat. And actually, this diet widely used as primary prevention for hypertension. And if the DASH diet itself used in combination with low salt diet, it will be more effective if we use one strategy alone. In conclusion, there is gross evidence indicates that fruit and vegetable will decrease the problem of cardiovascular disease, and not only would concentrate about the quantity of fat, but rather try to look at the quality of fat. We don't have to concentrate in the quantity, we concentrate more in the quality of fat. So by changing or replacing the saturated fatty acid and the trans fatty acid and also the hydrogenated fatty acid into unsaturated fatty acid, it will promote the heart and decrease the risk factor for cardiovascular disease. By now I finish. I just would like to show you some of my book as an author or co-author or translator.
more quicker than my 20 minutes. I can't guarantee, but I'll try my best. Let us talk about nutrition regulation by distorting the facts. That is the headline. And well, it's a real honor for me to be here. And thank you for the invitation. The Mediterranean diet shows that the discussion about the state regulation of nutrition is going completely in the wrong direction. Olive oil, an important element with a red label, with a red dot. That's nonsense, really nonsense. And we must see this cuisine has really to do with, and so it's a wonderful example, to do with traditional culture, with information, and especially also with good taste. And the Mediterranean diet was not established by government regulations or by taxes. It's about people's pleasure and about the feelings of happiness associated with pleasure. And well, it has a very specific tradition. Nutrition is undoubtedly a high risk. Everyone who has ever eaten has died. We have a mortality rate of 100%, but we shouldn't blame this on nutrition though. It can't be so bad. At the end of the day, people are getting older and older with all the resulting consequences, included numerous diseases. What's interesting here is the definition of the WHO according to health. They say health, let me look for it exactly, health is a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being and not just the absence of disease or infirmity. It is therefore a matter of individual well-being. Nutrition plays an important role in this. Its function is not just limited to the calorie intake and nutrients supply. It's also an individual act of pleasure. State-regulated nutrition exposes people to health pressure, which, according to the WHO definition quoted at the beginning, cannot lead to complete well-being. A note of the cultural importance of food, and this also applies to the fascinating Arabic diet. State-regulated nutrition destroys important traditional culture. That's very important, very interesting. When ethnic groups migrate to another culture, it is their specific diet that is preserved the longest, longer than the language. Regulations have been attempted in some countries. There is no evidence whether existing so-called nanny state laws have led to a reduction in obesity in these countries. In fact, we have seen a very interesting chart about Chile in this point. One notable example is the fat tax introduced in Denmark in October 2011. It applied to foods and beverages, especially foods that contain more than 2.3% of saturated fats. The tax was abolished after 15 months as the measure had failed. The decrease in the consumption of corresponding foods was just 0.9%, and that was the equivalent of the fault tolerance. At the same time, it was observed, and that is very interesting, that consumers choose inferior products with the same quantity and of sugar and fat, for example, just to keep the price of their consumption at the same level. Studies are cited for political demands to regulate people. A massive encroachment on personal lifestyles requires a solid scientific basis. The fact is, however, that epidemiological studies don't provide any evidence, and observational studies are not suitable to derive preventive or treatment recommendations for them. The studies only provide correlations. Also here we have seen some very interesting examples. Observing correlations is a long way from identifying causes. The nutrition regulations being discussed today with great zeal are not proven in the sense of evidence-based medicine. At the center of all the commotion is sugar, which is said to be responsible for an imaginative range of diseases. Is there any truth to the claim that sugar leads to tooth decay, obesity, diabetes mellitus, and threatens our children in particular? Not much. It has not been proven yet that the consumption of sugar directly influences the risk of diabetes. All constructs used in this argument have a big question mark hanging over them. In Germany, the so-called German Nutrition Society evaluated 400 studies to assess the relationship between carbohydrate intake and the prevention of selected diet-related diseases. The result is that there is no correlation between sugar intake and obesity. A big belly is a crucial factor in the risk of diabetes. It doesn't matter what kind of food you acquired it with. And there are many factors that can vary considerably from person to person besides nutrition. These include genetic predispositions, stress, hormonal disorders, mental illness, changes of the intestinal flora, and many other factors. It is not correct to misuse children and adolescents as an argument for obesity and diabetes. In Germany, and this will be, I suppose, similar in a lot of other countries, type 2 diabetes has a prevalence of 0.03% in boys and 0.04% in girls up to 19 years in age. The risk of diabetes only gradually increases in the second half of life and correlates in particular with two factors: the size of your body and the lack of exercise. Diabetes is 800 times more common among senior citizens than among adolescents, and a few kilos less. And regular walks are often enough to combat diabetes later. Children and adolescents are supposed to be getting fatter and fatter due to sugar, but they are not doing that favor. The most important long-term study in Germany, it's made by the Robert Koch Institute, about children and adolescents' health in Germany shows that there has been no increase in child obesity for the last 10 years. We have looked to the people when we discuss about them. 94% are not obese. The fat and obese level has been identical for around about 10 years. But we discuss as the people becoming having more and more overweight. interesting in this study is that the number of children who are physically active for at least 60 minutes less than 2 days a week has increased. These contexts show that we have a lot of other aspects, and we are becoming a sedentary society in the world of work, and even more so in our leisure time. Maybe the warning, my idea in this case, maybe the warning caution may lead to obesity and diabetes should be placed on game consoles. In addition to genetic causes, a permanent imbalance between energy intake and energy expenditure is the main cause for the development of obesity. Sedentary behavior at school, in training and at work, as well as through media-related leisure activities, has become a significant risk for obesity. When we are talking about reduction, about taxes and traffic light systems to regulate the consumption, we need a healthy dose of realism too. I will use German figures. For example, 85% of children and adolescents have no overweight and are not fat. Let us assume that 50% that are defined as overweight, a quarter of them would benefit from a reduction in sweet drinks. Of these, perhaps a quarter would actually consume less due to taxes and advertising bans. That leaves us with just under 1%. That means that roughly 100 people to take state-regulated swimming lessons because one of them can't swim. May this guy don't want to learn it or just can't it. These figures impressively show that there is no need for nutritional regulation for absolutely everyone. That's the point. I mentioned olive oil. With the red dot, it's complete nonsense. So let me make a fundamental comment on the color rating of food using the traffic light systems. It makes no sense because it only refers to 4 nutrients. It is therefore not possible to correctly classify a product and its significance for overall nutrition. For example, there is no information about the calorie content, other important nutrients such as protein and so on. And imagine when people buy the red, the green products, and they will only buy green products, and they will sit on the couch, pass the time with video games and in social networks, and will eat all the green products. They will significantly gain weight, and they will wonder what they did wrong. To call for advertising bans, sugar tax, however, also be viewed critically from another aspect. In a saturated market, the aim of advertising is not to increase overall consumption. It is rather intended to defend the high price products' market share. And for example, that is why a company with a very strong brand in the soft drink market must be awarded a medal from the point of view of the punitive tax. The same, if you buy it, such a soft drink, buy it at a discounter, it will cost 1 liter €1.50, and a no-name product in the same shop, you will buy 1 liter for 26 cents. That means this company has made for themselves a tax of 460%. What does that mean? If you add a new tax, the only winner will be the no-name product, because the parents can buy for their children much more of the no-name product and much more of sweets for the same money, and that is exactly what the people do. I have 2-3 minutes to finish. Okay. I've only one short point. It would be a separate speech. The WHO, that's very interesting, was
As I said in my presentation, adaptation is the word, and again, I hate the idea of traveling the world, bringing the Mediterranean culture and the Mediterranean diet everywhere, like it's the only thing that works. It's not like this. It's actually pretty easy to get, even without being an expert, get the concepts that are behind, underneath the Mediterranean diet lifestyle, and readapt it to every food culture in the world. So a lot of plant foods, a little meat, maybe white feta and legumes in particular, a lot of physical activity, and I really am happy that this has been stressed a lot. Actually, in the part of the activities that we do in the education project I showed you is the physical activity part. There was no time to show you, but there is no diet or dietary education without a physical activity education. It always needs to go in parallel. So it's actually pretty easy to apply it everywhere. If it worked in the UK, if it worked in the Alps, it's extremely easy to adapt it to here, and in general to the Middle East. You can actually, perhaps it's even easier to follow the Mediterranean advice here than in Parma. Parma is in the center of Italy, very far from the coasts, and we tend to be very non-Mediterranean. So I think if you get the idea and these main messages that have been actually repeated by all of us, it's easy to get.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Rashid and Dr. Sadi, the different presentations have highlighted that there are no good or bad foods or good or bad diets as such. There are many different factors that can contribute to obesity and NCDs, such as lifestyles, behaviors adopted by the consumers, portion control, physical inactivity, among others. What is your view on this, and where do you think the focus should be in order to tackle NCDs?
I think the more important thing, we have to focus on the consumer to give them more awareness and regarding the different, the bad food and healthy food and the healthy diet. Also, it have to be in different campaigns yearly, and we have to increase the yearly the number of campaigns and awareness in different places, like in malls, in schools, in hospitals, in different places. Also in mosques, we can do it.
Dr. Sadi?
I agree with all the speakers that education and awareness very important issue. And I think in the awareness we have to start with the awareness, the messages itself. For example, the message we need to be positive. For example, we are, as an example only, for sodium, we are saying we are drinking more salt. In the same way, the main cause has been proved by American Heart Association and other many studies, the issue of the shortage potassium, since the sodium-potassium ratio is 1:16 to be. When they conducted a study for in states, for example, a study of 1,200 patients, they found that sodium was 4,500 milligram to potassium 25 milligram, which was 1.36 sodium to 1 potassium ratio. Compare the right one is 116. The shortage nutrient in the body cannot synthesize that body as we know. But at the same time, for example, sodium, body can get rid of the sodium, extra excess since it's a nutrient, water-soluble nutrient. It would be easy to be removed from the system by different mechanisms, for example. So if we target the consumer more, the message about to have more potassium, which more significant to have more potassium than reducing the sodium intake in order to solve the issue. This is my main thing, my main concern.
Thank you. This is a question addressed to all of you. Some measures and policies that aim to target products having sugar, salt, and fat can also, as we see many examples, can impact negatively some products which have been established, for which nutritional properties have been established, and that are considered a better alternative for a healthy diet. For example, if a product starts being classified, as we saw in the wrong way, there are no good or bad foods, but if it starts being classified as good or bad and discriminated, for example, due to their fat content, then products such as olive oil, as it was shown in the presentation, which contains 99% of fat, and which is a key ingredient in the Mediterranean diet and has renowned nutritional properties, then would be impacted and discriminated. Then how could we best ensure that the policies and regulations and measures introduced in place do not impact such products and avoid having these sorts of classification of good and bad? Perhaps we can start with.
Okay, that's the crucial point. We know many scientific questions, and we have to give some message to the population, because we cannot expect the population know the science. So the message has to be, how can we translate to population the knowledge of science? But if we decided, if we, government, I mean, so establishment, decided for people, this is not an educational way. In Italy, we have, we gave a very high relevance to the nutritional labels in the products. We explained industries is obliged to specify the nutritional composition. And if we are able to educate population to understand what does it mean, that's the clue. That's the very important point. I have not, it's not correct that I decide what consumer has to consume.
Yes.
I have to give the instrument for him to decide, because only consumer knows exactly how is his life. So if I say, if I put a red dot on a product and I don't know what else this person will eat during the day,
Yes.
it's nonsense, because maybe the amount of this product, it's good for the day, because in the other part of the day we need other things. So that it's incorrect in this case that these people, this person particularly, will not consume this product.
Also, I like to add what we are doing in our National Nutrition Committee regarding the food traffic. For example, for olive oil, we are doing exception for some kind of food. For example, like olive oil, like soft drink, and all vegetables oils, and some spices and salt. So it was for a special kind of food. Just we are following with them the traffic system level.
Actually, olive oil considered the best for the heart because it contains a lot of concentration of monounsaturated fatty acid. The unsaturated fatty acid decrease the bad cholesterol without affecting of the good cholesterol, while the polyunsaturated fatty acid will decrease both the good cholesterol and the bad cholesterol, while the trans fatty acid, which makes the other way around, it will raise the bad cholesterol and decrease the good cholesterol.
Add something that is a little out of the picture. Again, I don't like the demonizing individual foods. I appreciate the fact that you can actually make it wisely and make exceptions, but still I am deeply convinced, strongly convinced that education is the best way. So making every child aware from tomorrow of the portions. Of course, we're talking about olive oil. Olive oil is good, but you can't drink olive oil. Okay, so it's always a matter of portions, as everything. But making them aware of the meaning, so the significance of a specific ingredient, the portions, the pyramid adapted to every local situation. And this needs to be done in the right environments. I really appreciate the fact that you said not just at school, but everywhere, even in the mosque. I really love this idea. And you need to get the children in a very specific way, though. You can't teach them like you teach math. You need to do it properly with the right tools. That's why we're developing tools. But it needs to be done, and even if you cannot measure the effect immediately, this is another point. These policies do not have an immediate impact. So education, it takes a long time to see the effects of education, and we need to invest this. This would definitely be the best investment ever, even if I understand the problem even in politics of seeing the aftermath of a policy when it's too late, when you're not in charge anymore, someone else is. At least this is what is happening in Italy. And I'm going to make one final comment. It's how can we implement these policies from an economical viewpoint? I've already thanked the ambassador and the European Union for funding research, and they also fund this type of projects. But I think private companies might be, and actually should be, involved in the process. In Parma, some of the private food companies in the area are actually funding the educational project. So instead of paying an additional tax, you teach students how they should eat healthily.
We have voluntary standards coming out as nutritional labeling as traffic light, and there is many food exempted from that standard, such as you put such olive oil, water, whatever that will confuse the consumer. It will not target in the education way. So we have that nobody can use it, and it's voluntary. Currently, nobody can use that for classification of olive oil, for example.
I appreciate a lot the question of the issue of the proportions. Portions is crucial because, as we stressed before, there are no good food and bad food. All are good food. There's only one food that's not good, is the poisonous mushrooms. But all foods are good. We have to understand, we have to learn, this is the education, how much of each food we should eat. That's the question. That's the crucial point. And I think that industries, if they understand that, they will be the first to improve the composition of their foods, because they could be claimed, they could add a claim on the product if they have some beautiful things like low content of salt, low content of fat, okay? And we will need no anymore to put a red label, because it would be an interest of the industry to do that. If there is an awareness in the population to look for one product and not the other. And that was happening in Italy. Just with education and very clear, very fill nutritional labels without traffic light, just nutritional labels, we reduced the incidence of childhood obesity, and we increased the sale of a product with a low content of salt and fats. Just doing that, explain to people, look, this product we have the unsaturated fatty acids, saturated fatty acids, the calories, the nutritional, polyphenols, a lot of things, all explained. But we need for that the population is educated. Otherwise, people does not understand what is explained in nutritional label. But that's the only way. It's not a way to say without explaining, this is a red one, this is a green one, eat this, do not eat that. It's not good, because people will do not that. I mean, I'm talking in Italian culture, we are prone to do the opposite of what people say to do. so it's a boomerang effect in our culture. I'm talking about Italy, of course.
Yeah, I will agree with you in some aspect about food, the portion and the awareness is very important, but the portion won't be get into the classification of the food or of the amount. You can have the same amount, several units, and you will eat it, so that you are getting a different thing. So I mean, the portion itself cannot be into the classification at the same time for nutritional labeling purposes, which will give a confuse to the consumer. Awareness, yes, awareness and education, the main important point to go through.
But the awareness is the first step. The second step of population is the decision step. And I have to inform through labels what this product contains. Okay? If I do his job, the job of consumer, I do not educate. I take a decision for him. And maybe
what's contained, this is a classification where you will tell, but you will not tell the portion, because the eater would be different age, different category group
but
of people,
it's impossible.
have different requirements, have different physical activities, have many things.
Of course, it's impossible to classify the portion in the product, of course. But the producer, the government, it's not informed on how the single individual person will eat during the day. So this is part of the awareness and education.
I agree with you.
Okay.
I have seen the thing, I can tell you, I have seen a smart app that have for each one, it's working in stages actually. Smart app, there is, and you have your own profile. Anything you eat, you just scan the barcode and it will tell you you're meeting your requirement, and that app also with your whole physical activity. It will count for you the calories and the nutrients needed, and will tell you are sufficient nutrients.
I also appreciate the fact that we're now getting all this, mobile phones, smartphones, and it's very useful. But again, I think it needs to start before. And actually, technically, the pyramid and also the dome that I showed are actually a description, a very graphical description of portions. So we already know in the context of the Mediterranean diet what we need to eat in a small amount. And sweets and desserts are actually up in the top. They're not out of the pyramid. Technically, everything is within the pyramid. The portions are different, so we need to start from there.
I will go back regarding bad food and good food. Actually, there is no good food and there is no bad food. There is bad food pattern and good food pattern. For example, some people drink 3 bottles of Coke per day, and some people drink it once a week, and some people drink it once in a month. So if you drink it once in a month, there's no problem at all, because there is misunderstanding. People say we have 3 kinds of toxic: the white flour, and also which is mistake, and the salt, and also the salt, sugar, and the white flour, which is completely wrong, because it's not toxic. If we eat it, we're not going to die. So if we use it in moderation, will be no problem at all.
Dr. Asadi, with the introduction of regulations and restrictions on certain nutrients in food products, such as sugar, salt, and fat, isn't there a risk that some companies would start replacing these nutrients with less healthy options?
There is a risk, but they will not be able to register. For the new product, it has to go through review and registration. So it has contained certain that's not approved ingredients to safety food. For example, some sugar substitute, sweeteners, some artificial sweeteners are not allowed in our country. Some are allowed.
Yeah, but it's like substituting the known for the unknown is somehow a pretty big leap. So for sweeteners, for example, there was a moment when it came into the market where everybody was happy, so less sugar and sweeteners are non-caloric, so it's no problem. But then it turns out that it's not like this, and now research is emerging. You need, even for research, you need a certain amount of time in order to prove the effects. And it looks like they're not as good as as we used to think. So you're right, and another. This is the case of when you demonize a specific type of ingredient, and then all of a sudden part of the market is substituting it with maybe something similar, like fat for fat, but different sources. And but technologically this might impact, but also also the taste might change. But then also the health, aftermath. You don't know. You think you're doing the right thing, but sometimes there's not been a lot of thought before.
Regarding the artificial sweeteners, if it's approved by the FDA in America and the EFSA in Europe and New Zealand and Australia and all over the world from the regulatory affairs in these countries, so I think will be no problem because they know much better than we do already know.
Yeah, but still, I think to see I'm not saying that you're substituting one ingredient with one that is negative or toxic. Again, there's nothing, you're right. But the long effect of exposure to sweeteners, we were not able to demonstrate it until now. And now it looks like that even in the way without getting into endocrinology, but it looks like the appetite changes when you consume sweeteners for a long time. So I'm actually not so positive about substituting one nutrient for something completely different. That's my point. You need to, in case, consider the portion of that specific food, and that's, again, education. I always go back to education, I think.
Other thing, also a similar issue, not only that happened for sugar, substituting, for example, the experience of states when they banned trans fat 5 years back. They studied the substitute ingredient for trans fat because some processed food, it needs some special properties of the trans fat to be there. So they approved a substitute for trans fat and a healthier option that food industry can use it. After studies and after also they checked everything about it, about how to analyze it and how to go through it, which is a great idea so that they don't open the door that all manufacturers, they can put whatever they can substitute.
You're right, but in the case of trans fat, the difference was that trans fats were not naturally present in the product. Most of them were actually artificially produced during hydrogenation, for example. So I think that was the main thing, and reducing the amount of trans fat, substituting them with any kind of fat would have worked, and actually it's working. This is one of the few things that have been demonstrated recently. So.
In Saudi Arabia, it's not 2020. There will be no hydrogenated oil available in the market in Saudi Arabia because because it will raise trans fatty acid from the hydrogenation fatty acid.
We have seen in your presentation the example of Chile, where despite the introduction of regulations, the level of obesity and NCDs are still on the rise. Actually, the example was quite surprising. What is the reason in your view, and where do you see the gaps?
Well, I'm not. So, I just showed you the data. I'm not sure, I cannot say that the reason of the increase of the obesity rate in Chile is due to the measure they used. I cannot say that. But in fact, it occurred. So probably for this kind of population, this was not the right thing to do. The gap, the explanation of the gap maybe is due to the fact that if you turn a consumer from a sugar-rich product to a sweetener-rich product, you are prone to use more of this product because you have a sensation, a feeling of safety of this product, and you're prone to use more. So we should return back always the problem of education. If I say that this product has low fat, I have to explain that that's not a reason to consume a lot of that product. But the perception is that, oh, with this food, I lose weight. That's not, there is no food that makes you losing weight. But the perception is that. So the educational explanation is also important for the free fat products or free sugar products. Okay? Otherwise, we are moving the trend of consuming food from one not so good to another in excess. And it's not, and I can have a result by that.
Okay. Can I add something? First of all, I remember when I was a boy, we were actually taking a lot of risks. Okay, so I'm not taking a lot of risks now that I'm not a boy anymore, unfortunately. But I was taking a lot of risks. It was nice and funny to risk. Okay, so if you start putting black stamps on my products, first game I will do with my pals would be, how many black stamps have you eaten today? I've eaten like 15. Okay, so actually you might end up in doing the opposite, getting the opposite results. This is one point of it that might explain the association. But I think in the case of Chile, like in the case of Italy, the final numbers I showed you in my presentation, there's also a social problem. If you check in which part of the population obesity is on the rise, you will see that it's on the rise in the poor population. That's where affordability and public policies need to strike the most. If you check wealthy people in Chile, they're all lean. Like wealthy people in Italy, most of them are actually lean. And then you check some of the, even geographically, you can actually find the distribution, but mostly it's based on the social status and well-being. So I think in that case, more than putting black stamps or traffic lights, you need to implement public policy that target in particular poor areas and the poor part of the population. You would definitely see the effect. If you do the black stamp thing or the traffic light thing, in the end, the company might actually be forced to reduce the price of its product so that you still sell it, even if it has the black stamp. And who consumes this? Who cannot afford most, more pricey and expensive products. So I think this might be part of the explanations. And again, you go back and you go back again to education and public.
Dr. Rashid and Dr. Asadi, the last question. When policies and regulations are being developed and adopted, how are the local needs and cultural habits of the population taken into account? Because we see, for example, at the level of the GCC, maybe some regulations are inspired by the UK or by the US in terms of the nutrition labeling regulation. So how are then these regulations, when they are developed or transposed, taking into account the local culture and the local needs?
I think before we starting to establish any regulation or changing in any specification for food, we have to know the country nutrition status or the country nutrition profile. So we are in the Ministry of Health in 2018 conduct a health survey. It was part of it, the nutrition status in United Arab Emirates through all Emirates. So after we know the status of a nutritional profile in country, we can do it what is suitable for us and what we can change. And also after we start to put any regulation, we have to give awareness for people why we are doing this one and what is the reason to have more healthy and to control the chronic disease and the protection.
We do the standards, of course, through the technical committees in the country and technical committees that engage government entities, representatives like Ministry of Health, all local health department, other things also. We involve the food industry about it, and we check also, in addition to the data that's available, we check what the current status of the technology in the food production, food processing, all this taken into account. And that technical committee will specialize in this issue, and the people from the industry and expertise, SMEs, subject matter experts are involved in this, in the whole process, engaged and involved in the whole process until we get into great standards that suit the country and the publication and the public in UAE.
Now to conclude, if I can ask each of you to provide very briefly your takeouts, like the key takeouts or recommendations. Perhaps we can start with
my short recommendation is the only word that we repeat is, education, and there are no good fats and no bad fats and bad foods. But the question, the issue is we have not to focus our minds on a single nutrient of our food. We have to consider the whole way of eating and living. So is the block of the Mediterranean diet is working, not the olive oil alone, or the cheese alone, or the cereal, the whole grain alone. We have to consider all together, and we do not ever have to forget that eating for man is not, as for animals, a way of nutrition and in anything else. We, through foods, communicate, have a social life, have a grateful life. So we have to consider this aspect, otherwise people will not be convinced to change this way of eating.
Also, I agree with him, but I think the awareness is not just to be for consumer and public. We have to focus in awareness for restaurant and industry and bakeries, because the all kind of food, what we are eating, the main food is coming through these three bakeries and restaurant and industry.
Of course, my word, but it has already been said. So I'm going to have a way to implement education and policies must involve a public-private interaction. So it has to be the public, of course, but even through private money. If the money from companies is used this way to educate, to start educational projects in schools, it's a way more effective way of, let's say, taxing a company than just taxing them because they sell products that are, I don't know, high in sugar, which doesn't make a lot of sense. While instead you should use their will, their knowledge, and also their money to educate. I think this might actually be, and it's working on a just will base, so spontaneously in many places as a corporate social responsibility feedback from the companies, and I don't see any problem in kind of asking them politely, but strongly to contribute to education, because it has to work.
Actually, the 6 essential nutrients, which is vitamin, mineral, water, carbohydrate, protein, and fat. So fat considered one of the essential nutrients. We have to take it every day. So if we would like to take, so we'll take the healthy kind of fatty acid, which is the unsaturated fatty acid.
My takeaway is the awareness, and especially in eating more fresh food compared to the processed food. So we should limit the processed food. We have to increase more of unprocessed food in the diet. So, especially the new generation.
But then you need to make them available. You need to make them available. Sustainable. Exactly, sustainable.
Affordable as well.
And affordable. And affordable.
Junk food are cheap, but good food is expensive. You go in the grocery, you're going to see there like lots of, section of junk and bad food, but unfortunately there's nothing but good food that you can go and buy. I educate my children. Personally, I own a fitness instructor, Pilates studio. I educate my kids. I teach them how to eat. They have to be active. They have to exercise. But unfortunately, the society, for example, the school, they go what they see, junk food around them. They get tempted because it's sugar. Sugar is tasty. Junk food is tasty. So the government, in my opinion, government has to get involved and be more serious to control all the foods and everything and activities as well. At the school, they don't have enough activities. They study more, but they don't active at all. There's no exercise. They have to do regularly every day. So diet, no diet, good food, bad food, doesn't make sense. I eat everything. I exercise. I'm fit. I'm 50 years old. I'm proud, and I'm doing activities as well. So we have to control and teach. Government has to control the sugar. The fat doesn't make you fat. Sugar makes you fat. The problem is sugar.
Yes.
No, you are completely right. The fat makes us, because if you look to the concentration per gram, we found it's 9 grams per each 1 gram of oil or fat, while the carbohydrate or the protein is only 4 calories for each gram.
I know, but we have more bad fat, like canola oil we have in the market, which is really bad and cheap. It's being used more than butter or olive oil or coconut oil. You go buy a small jar of coconut oil, it's very expensive.
We have to differentiate between junk food and fast food. Junk food, which has a lot of calories without nutrients. While the fast food, the food we have to prepare it very fast, we take it for 5 or 10 minutes, it will be ready. So there is big difference. Some of the fast food are healthy food because it's ready-made already.
I might not agree about the sugar. It's sugar that makes you fat. It's in general, it's inactivity and a lot of calories that make you fat. But what I agree upon is improving the quality of food catering in schools, definitely, absolutely. Increasing the physical activity hours in school, absolutely. Even that high quality physical activity, because it's not all the same, like for the diet. I absolutely agree on that. So having food dispensers with I don't like the word junk food, but only junk food is definitely something that needs to change. And in restaurants, in canteens, school canteens, we need to be more careful, and we are trying to be more careful in Italy about what we provide, about the portions, and also about sustainability, because this has also been mentioned. And yes, affordability of quality foods is something that needs to be taken under great consideration. I fully agree. This is what happened in Italy back 10 years ago. Affordability of high quality food was down because of our power to buy, because of the crisis, and this actually ended up in a deleterious effect on our health. So we definitely need to work there, and that's why I am preaching for public-private interactions in this case.
The last message I want to say is that the food at all schools in UAE are regulated. Not any food can be sold, and no such junk food sold in our schools currently.
I know, but some parents they give their food to their children bring them to school, but other parents they give them
And
to
they are not
children.
allowed also to bring the food from their home.
But they allow. I have children. I'm talking about my kids. The school.
Sorry.
They allow.
We will have to close the discussion for today. You can continue perhaps the discussions at lunchtime or. In conclusion, I would like to thank the Italian ambassador and the embassy for this important event, and to thank the speakers and the panelists, and of course for all of you for your participation and for showing interest for this important event. And I will invite you now to join the Mediterranean balanced lunch that we promised you for your patience.